Hello everyone, welcome to exercise 12, STALLS. This exercise is in direct continuity of slow flight. Stall depends solely on the critical angle of attack, that is, the plane will stall when it reaches its critical angle of attack. Some lift is still being produced by the wing when the plane is stalled, only not enough to maintain the airplane flying. Stalls will be practiced power off and power on in a variety of flap settings. The idea is to replicate real-life scenarios where you would be most likely to encounter stalls. Let's jump right away to power off stalls with power on recovery. Just like slow flight, the examiner will specify the altitude, heading, and flap setting at which the exercise is to be performed. The first step will be to complete the Hazel check. If you need to review the Hazel check, feel free to refer to exercise 11, slow flight video. When the Hazel check is complete, make sure you begin the exercise at the requested altitude and heading. When ready, reduce the power smoothly to idle. You can expect right away tendency for the nose to drop. You will need to apply gradual back pressure to maintain the altitude. Feel free to trim to make the task easier, although it is not mandatory. When the speed is in the wide arc, add the flaps as per the instructions given by the examiner. Remember that as you lower the flaps, you will need to slightly lower the nose to prevent a gain of altitude. The first sign of the approaching stall will be the stall horn. When heard, you can smoothly apply more back pressure to induce the stall. It will be characterized by either of the following, but not always all of them: a buffet of the controls, higher pitched stall horn, a drop of the nose of the plane, a loss of altitude. When you recognize the stall, the recovery is straightforward, but the procedure must be followed strictly. First, lower the nose to break the stall. The plane should be pointing down roughly like during normal descent, that is around 3 degrees nose down. Excessive nose down will lead to excessive loss of altitude and excessive gain of airspeed, which are unnecessary. Apply full power and set the carpet to cold. As soon as the speed reaches around 60 knots, the plane is not stalled anymore, and you can smoothly start pitching up again. Setting the nose of the plane on the horizon is a good rule of thumb. Be gentle on the controls to avoid a secondary stall. You can then retract the flaps in stages. If there is a wing drop during the stall, the initial reaction should be to use opposite rudder. Using ailerons would only make the stall worse. Once the plane is not stalled anymore, you can then use ailerons. During the recovery, you are expected to set the plane in a climb to at least your original altitude. When the examiner is satisfied, he will precise at which altitude he wants you to fly. You can expect to practice these stalls in a variety of flaps, turns, climbs, descents, etc. The recovery procedure will always be the same. Power on stalls will work the same way, except this time we will have power, you guessed it. This exercise could simulate a stall on departure due to an excessive nose up attitude, for instance. The examiner will specify the power setting at which the exercise is to be performed, the starting altitude and heading, as well as the bank if there is any. When practicing power on stalls, we'll always be climbing the plane. As usual, complete the Hazel check. When ready, set the required RPM. This will range from 2000 to full power. For this example, we'll use 2200 RPM. Then, pitch the nose up enough so the speed will decrease to stall the plane. Not enough nose up will not make you stall. On the other hand, too much nose up will lead to violent stall. A good rule of thumb is to set the VX attitude, that is the nose of the plane slightly above the horizon. As you pitch up, the RPM will decrease. Adjust the RPM promptly to maintain a desired value by adding some power. As the speed goes down, add the required amount of flaps. Adjust the attitude if need be. If the speed is not decreasing anymore, you will need more nose up. Set the bank if any. For this example, we won't use any bank. When close to the stall, smoothly add some back pressure to accelerate the onset of the stall. Once you recognize the stall, recovery is nose down, the same amount as for a power off stall. Remember, the stall happens when reaching the critical angle of attack of the wing. Therefore, lowering the nose will lower the angle of attack and break the stall. Do not pitch down too much, or the altitude loss and airspeed gain will be excessive. As the speed increases around 60 knots, raise the flaps and smoothly start bringing the nose back up on the horizon. When doing so, simultaneously apply full power and set carpet on cold. Establish the plane back in a climb and level off when the examiner tells you so, or at the original altitude at which the exercise began. The standards at which we will perform this exercise are strict altitude in the entry, plus minus 100 feet. Recovery with less than 300 feet loss. Set the airplane in the climb during the recovery. no flaps over speed, and no ailerons used during the initial stage of the recovery if there is a wing drop. The procedure described in this video should be strictly applied for a safe and efficient way to practice stalls. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see each other for the next lesson on the type of aggravated stalls, spins.